So we have just witnessed the first match between the Springboks and the All Blacks of the Rugby Championship, and now we get to see it again this weekend, Cape Town Stadium. And in this video, we're going to be trying our best to predict who Scott Robertson is going to be going with in his 23-man side to take on the Boks in what is a massively important game in this competition, and also for the Freedom Cup. If New Zealand lose this, they lose the cup. So, Tim, what do the All Blacks need to do differently than what they did in the first match? Because overall, you'd say, with the exception of discipline, they were pretty decent throughout that contest. I don't want to give you the easy option. The easy option is the penalties.
One thing they need to work on. It's just discipline. That's it. I think everything else, they were spot on in terms of what they did. They pressured the defense from a defensive point of view. I think they were spot on in terms of line speed. But from an attacking point of view, they just oozed class in terms of getting the ball out quickly. It's just that's just that penalty count they have to worry about. But besides that, they can go into the second test with a lot of motivation to kind of get that win.
And with it being so close in that first match, only 4 points separating these two sides. Like you mentioned, both sides felt like they had a chance of winning that one. The Springboks, the much better side in the second half, later on in the contest when the bench made their way on. New Zealand have talked about it. Their bench isn't good enough in terms of what they did in that first match. So now we have to try and guess what Scott Robertson will do in the second match to counter that. Could it be maybe a different number in terms of the split? We will have to wait and see. But the front row, Tim, for yourself, who have you gone with in the front three for this matchup?
Yeah, so for the All Blacks, I've gone with Tamati Williams at number 1, Cody Taylor number 2, and Tyrell Lomax number 3. I think this has just been an unchanged front row for myself. I think, like I said, for the Springboks, I think they didn't do anything wrong in my opinion. I think in the opening half, I think it was pretty much of a stalemate, I'd say, in terms of those scrums and set pieces. So I think they did their job from that standpoint. And I think all of them just, I mean, Cody Taylor I thought was pretty impressive. He gained a lot of kind of carries, I'd say, throughout the game, kind of moved the All Blacks up further into the 22. So I thought he had a good game for them. But yeah, I just think there's nothing really I can think of that in terms of bringing a player on that would impact the game drastically to kind of make a difference. So I think sticking with the same front row is probably the right call.
Cody Taylor scoring the first try of the contest for the All Blacks, closely followed by a Bongi or Manambi try, both hookers getting the early tries in this Rugby Championship game. But Tamati Williams, he is my number 1 that I believe Scott Robertson will be going with. I don't think Tamati had as much of an impact as some first anticipated, but saying that, when you're going up against Frans Malherbe, it is always going to be tough at scrum times. I think he held his own, and I know New Zealand, even though they would have liked to win 1 or 2 extra penalties, they will probably be quite happy that they didn't concede 1 or 2 extra throughout the matchup as well. Cody Taylor as the 2. His lineouts were pretty strong. I think that was the main concern when Scott Barrett came back into the side. The All Blacks heading into this game had the highest lineout percentage won throughout the Rugby Championship, whereas up against the English, that lineout number was pretty low. But in this game, they seemed to get it right. The occasional Springbok steal was on the cards, but that is always the case when you're versing the world champs. So Cody Taylor doing his job in the starting lineup. Now, there is a chance that we see a Safa more at some stage throughout this Rugby Championship, but that is more than likely going to be up against the Australians in the starting side. And I don't know how they're going to use George Bell, to be honest, at this point. They're almost too deep in this game and too deep in this 2-match series up against the Springboks. I don't know if they can afford to bring him in, even though he can have some great moments. You just need your experience, and that is what Cody Taylor brings you in that number 2 jersey. Tyrell Lomax, that man had a phenomenal game, having a lot of tackles made, 14 in total. He actually made more than Ethan Blackadder throughout this contest, just to put into perspective what kind of game he had, because Blackadder looked like he was everywhere. But Tyrell Lomax, 14 from 14, didn't miss a tackle throughout this game for the ABs. Also was involved in that nice pass out wide to Caleb Clark, the little pump fake from the tight head prop. You love to see it. And hopefully we see a little bit of magic from him in the second test as well. In the locking duo now we move on to number 4, I have gone with the captain, Scott Barrett. Number 5, Tupou Vaa'i. I don't believe there's anything that you really need to change in this department. Vaa'i, I think, stepped up in that number 5 jersey, getting that crucial turnover at one point in the game. Scott Barrett, I think it was good from him. I think we still need to see just that little bit more, though. At the end of the day, he's the captain. He's got to lead from the front, and there were a few men who were doing a little bit more work than Scott Barrett out there on the field. So hopefully this next game, we see a little bit more discipline from him as well. He did concede 2 penalties throughout the contest, But overall, I don't think you can change this locking duo at this stage of the comp.
I agree. I think, like you said, I think I've gone the same two pairing as you with Scott Barrett and Tupavai. I think them two were pretty good, I'd say, throughout the whole game. I mean, Tupavai definitely stepped up to the occasion. I mean, it's crazy to think that, the All Blacks at one point, they were kind of worried about their locking situation, but now they're growing in a bit of depth here now with Tupavai, Sam Derry. You got Patrick Tuipulotu when he's back in time, Scott Barrett now back. So they're getting some good depth in that position now. And I think with Scott Barrett, it's like you said, he made some, I guess, little errors in the game, kind of conceding penalties. But besides that, he definitely led from the front, and he definitely helped those, particularly those lineouts, because that's where the All Blacks, I think, were actually better than the Springboks actually on the day. So if he can kind of continue that in terms of just helping them steal some lineouts, but also just pressuring the Springboks in terms of that defense, then yeah, I think he's a good player to have in. So that would be my locking duo.
So once again, we have got 3 of the front 5 as Crusaders. Is that the Scott Robertson kind of wearing off on us a little bit? Maybe we're starting to think like him a little bit more. And now we move on to the loose forward trio. For yourself, got a Crusader as the number 6. You were talking about it before we started recording. You've almost said he cemented that 6 jersey.
Oh,
you
for
got
sure.
Ethan Blackadder for this game.
Yes, it's without a doubt. Without a doubt, he is definitely the number 6 now for the future for the All Blacks. I think he's now going to be like, I can see him as the next number 6 for the All Blacks in the next World Cup. Like right off the bat, I can say that right now. I think he just had a great game for them, and the All Blacks have been searching for a player like him. I mean, since I'm trying to think who was the big number 6 they had. I mean, it was probably Shannon Brazil actually who they're trying to replace. But even before then, it was like Jerome
Probably
Kano.
looking back at, I was going to say Kano, possibly.
Yeah, so they've always been they've always trying to go for a big body in that. And I think even Blackadder's definitely stepped up to the occasion. So I think he's number 6 for certain. I think for those 7, I mean, it's a bit unfortunate with Dalton Papali'i because we're a bit unsure if he's available or not because, he had that thumb injury, which meant that Sam Cane got kind of started in the first test. But I think Sam Cane did pretty well actually on the day. Like he didn't make too many mistakes that I can think of, and I think it's good to have a player like him from an experience standpoint. So he's definitely the number 7, and then number 8, without a doubt, it's Otis Villa. No question about that. I would be very I know it sounds strange, but I wouldn't mind the idea of shifting Otis Villa to the 7 and putting Wallace Atiti at the number 8, like something just to try different to kind of counteract what the Springboks do in terms of that loose forward trio, because I think Wallace Atiti and Jasper Wiese are kind of very similar types of players in terms of their body type, but also just in terms of how they play and kind of just carry the ball and kind of try to find it's the clean breaks, really. That's what they're made to do. So I wouldn't mind that as a switch, but I just don't think they'll do it because it's too big of an occasion. It's the second test in South Africa, so it'd be a very big call for Razor to make. But for now, I think that's the loose forward trio that I think he'll go with.
And it is a tricky one, isn't it? Because if Savia had more minutes earlier in the Rugby Championship in that 7 jersey, perhaps that is something they would be willing to try out. It's a little bit similar to what we talked about last week in terms of that Leonard Brown, Billy Proctor midfield combination. Because they haven't pulled the trigger on it early enough. Maybe now they've missed the boat and they haven't really got that opportunity to take that risk. In this matchup, for myself, I have not taken that risk. I've gone with number 6, Ethan Blackadder. I did find it quite interesting looking at the tackle stats because, like I said, I felt like that man was everywhere out there on the field, or at least it seemed that way. But he was actually the 4th in terms of the rankings of the amount of tackles made for the All Blacks. There were 3 players who made more. Sam Cane was one of them. We also saw more from Tyrell Lomax and Ardie Savia also having one more than Ethan Blackadder. But he's still one of those players that you kind of need out there on the field because at least it looks like he's trying and he's going to do something. He gets into a lot of breakdowns as well, which is something that those type of stats that look at the tackles don't tell you. And he's one of those players that ill discipline can sneak into it a little bit for him. We did see it at moments throughout the game. I think it was more that the camera crew in South Africa just seemed to love his mullet. Because anytime there was a penalty, they'd just zoom in on the mullet. Even though Blackadder wasn't even involved. There was one that I think it was Rico Ioane got penalised. And they were like, look at that flowing thing on the back of Ethan Blackadder's head.
Oh, look at that, guys. That's Max haircut right there.
You're like, Blackadder, he'll be thinking of getting a haircut at this point just to stop the cameras from zooming in on him. But
gosh, imagine when they face the Wallabies. They'll be probably half the game will be just showing Ethan Blackadder with his mullet.
And it's quite a lovely mullet. The NRL would certainly be proud of it. Someone like, I want to say a name, but you won't know who this is. Do you know who Fa'asua Mala'awi is?
No, unfortunately not.
No. Well, he's got a nice flowing mullet in the NRL, but nonetheless, Sam Cane, lot easier name to say, as my number 7. He will once again get that open side flanker role. He made 16 tackles in the game up against the Springboks. He was one of those players that wanted redemption in this game, and I feel like it's still unfinished business. You know, he's put in some big hits throughout that contest. He's had some missed tackles in there as well. He got bumped off a couple times, which I think would have fired him up that a little bit more. But overall, he did what he needed to. I would still honestly take this Sam Cane performance over a couple of the Dalton Papali'i performances that we've had so far in the Rugby Championship. It's a little bit controversial, but I just felt like Sam Cane did a little bit more in this game. But one thing that he didn't do was get a turnover, which is normally what we see.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's the one thing of Papali'i, which I think he just does better than Cane. And that's what I think they needed, actually, because they needed to turn over the ball. So
would they have gotten penalised for it in this game, though? About 14 penalties against them.
Yeah, but you can win more. You can stop that by having more penalties on your side with someone like Papali'i winning the ball in the breakdown. But yeah, it's like these little moments where it can define a game. But I think Cane, by the way, had a solid game, so there's nothing wrong with what he did. I just think Papali'i just offers something different in that position.
Someone who had a solid game at times, but actually not his shiniest performance, I guess you'd say. Ardie Savia, number 8. He had some good moments, but at the same time, his hands didn't like him for this contest. It seemed to be that he was dropping the ball quite a bit, got penalised a couple times as well, Ardie Savia. So I feel like to his standards that he normally sets, that's the thing. Anyone else on the field having that type of game, you'd say about a 7 or a 8 out of 10, and they'd be pretty happy with the type of game that they had. But for Savia, for his standards, that was probably about a 5. And he will want about a 9 next week. So I think that if they put him in the starting lineup, he's going to be one to watch out for up against the Springboks in match number 2. But now we move on to the 9-10 combination. Now, this is where it gets controversial, because I believe that Scott Robinson will once again start TJ Perenara in that 9 jersey. You're shaking your head. I know it's not what people want, but we've got to look at Scott Robinson and his track record at the moment. Yeah. And then Damian McKenzie as the starting 10. Now, this might also be a controversial statement. Other than the fact that TJ got penalised for yelling at the referee, I think he had a pretty solid game. Probably his best game so far throughout 2024. His kicking was great. That little 50-22, just to then go, oh, ref, give me the penalty. And then the ref said, oi, TJ, shut your gob. Penalty against you.
Exactly.
But other than that, like, he was overall, I think, a lot better than a lot of people gave him credit for. In terms of coming into this game, people felt it should have been Cortez, and this might also be controversial. Cortez looking a little bit shaky off the bench in this game up against the Springboks, having a kick charge down, giving away a penalty, and just not really finding that rhythm early on. Maybe that is because they gave him such a limited amount of time and so much pressure was on at that point. But, you know, it could have been a different game if Cortez had started rather than coming off the bench. But I just feel like they'll go with TJ again in this next game.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I think they'll definitely go with TJ, the number 9. I think, like you said, I think he probably had his best game I can think of. Like maybe the week before, actually, against the Argentinians. I think he was pretty good in that second test, actually, the more I think about that one. But no, he had a superb game. His kicking was on points. Like, yes, his anger can kind of at times get the best of him. But I think that's kind of a good thing. It's a good aspect of his game, actually, that makes him kind of the player he is. So I kind of like that a bit. But no, McKenzie, of course, is number 10. No doubt about that. I think he had a solid game. I think from it was really a kicking battle at times, and I think he definitely delivered on that standpoint. Like, his kicking accuracy was pretty good. I just think Sasha I think he didn't expect it, but he actually kind of did well to kind of go against him actually in that battle, because you'd expect with McKenzie's experience to kind of beat him in that standpoint. But no, it was a pretty good contest actually. So, but no, I think those two will definitely be the 9-10 combination for the second test.
Yeah, I would say that South Africa, it seemed like they used that altitude a lot better than the All Blacks at times. Like, there were times where that territory battle, it was going back and forth, and then the last kick that South Africa would do would get them right down where New Zealand didn't really want them to be. But overall, like, McKenzie off the kicking tee as well, I feel like it was one of those games that he needed to slot over the points, and a majority of the time he was able to do so. So, yeah, he's still the 10 for Scott Robinson in his eyes anyway, in terms of what he wants moving forward. We move into the midfield combination now. You made any changes, or are you going Geordie Barrett, Rieko Ioane here for the second test?
Well, to a surprise, I have made a change here. This is probably the boldest call I've ever done, I think, in terms of this position here. But I have gone with Jordy Barrett. I think he had a solid game, I think, within that 12 spot. But I actually have made the bold decision to take out Reiko and to put in Billy Proctor to start in this game. So that's a big call to make. I think, like, if I had to change someone in, it would have probably made more sense to put Anthony Brown, because, you know, he's looked pretty good, I'd say, for the All Blacks in previous games. But I think, like, the reason why I'm putting Billy Proctor in is also because of the player I put in for the box in Lacagna Am. And I think if there's a player to match Lacagna Am in terms of, like, the speed but also skill set, I think Billy Proctor can deal with that. And also, just, they're kind of a similar type of player, similar builds, I'd say, as well. So that's kind of the reason why I selected him. And I think you'd add a different kind of skill set to the game to what Reiko normally does. I mean, look, you're not going to get his pace, of course, because that's just Reiko's game, of course. But I think Billy Proctor as a whole, his combination with Jordy could be something to watch. So I'd like to see that happen. But I think most likely Razor, will he go with it? I just don't know. I'd like him to. I think this is like the one call where I've kind of said my player I'd like to see. But I know that Razor in this position may go with Reiko to stick with.
You mentioned about Rico's pace, and unfortunately, opposition are just getting so good at shutting that man down. Like, he hasn't got that same kind of size that some of the other players do in that midfield combination. Like, Jordy Barrett can sometimes get through a tackle from just power. But Rico, it's definitely that speed that helps him. But the Springboks, they were just running 2 men up and boom, Rico shut down. And there weren't too many times that we got to see just that open running of Rico Ioane that we are used to seeing. He had more glimpses in this game, though, I believe, than we have seen in a few of the other matches. But unfortunately, they just know how to stop him at the moment. And is that because of the fact that he has been limited to that 13 jersey? Whereas, you know, I'm going to say it way back, was he better on the wing than he's been at 13? It just seems like he's wasted in that outside centre role. He hasn't scored a try in how long? He didn't score all throughout the Super Rugby Pacific season for the Blues. This really hurts Tim's feelings, by the way, ladies and gents, because this is his favourite player that we are bad-mouthing here. But
no, I think like with Reiko, like I've said this countless times, I think like with Reiko, when it comes to the international scene, it's very different to when you're playing for the Blues. Like, you can make the argument. I don't mind you saying anything about when it comes to the Blues. It's fair. It's fair game. You know, you expect him to kind of do better in that standpoint. But when it comes to the international scene, I think Reiko's he is just a different player. He just offers you a different skill set. And I think the one point I was going to say in this game, which that did look good and kind of where he had an opening, was, I think, setting up that. It was either the first or second try of Caleb where they went down the ring and Bowden found Reiko. He did a nice, he actually dummied a pass and then passed it off to a player. So there's those little moments like where it just, the experience of having Reiko in there as a center. Whereas if you put someone like a Billy Proctor in there, then you don't know if he'll do that kind of fake, or you don't know if he'll have that boost of pace which he had in that moment. So it's just these little things that can change a game. But look, it's not a bad point at all, because I've been like with Reiko, like he just has to stand up, I think, for himself and kind of just get an opportunity to kind of just get those meters out, because I don't think he had a bad game at all. It's more that the ball was never meant to go through him. I mean, at the end of the day, the strategy isn't like, it's more with Jordy Barrett. That's what they built. That's why he's just a irreplaceable player, I think, for the All Blacks right now. But with Reiko, you can make that argument. So, yeah.
Well, for me, I have made a switch in my centre combination as well. And it ain't Jordy Barrett. Jordy Barrett is still my number 12. Number 13, this is where I've gone with Anton Lienert-Brown.
Yeah.
So he came off the bench, didn't really get too many big moments in this
I
game.
actually don't even remember what.
No, I think there might have been one that he missed a tackle or dropped the ball is the only thing that I can think of that happened for Anton Lienert-Brown in this game. But I think that he could still offer something different at number 13 than what we see from Rico Ioane. Anton Lienert-Brown, to be honest, he doesn't look like he'd have the pace of Rico Ioane, but when he gets a gap, he goes through it. And he seems to just have that ability of getting off that one tackler who's on his leg, and then he's through, and then all of a sudden the All Blacks are in that open space. So I do like the idea of them going with them at 13 in this game alongside Jordy Barrett. Now, you could say those two are quite similar in the way that they play, and perhaps, you know, if you're in an ideal world, you might go Lienert-Brown 12, Rico 13, or at the start of the season, you'd say 12 and 13, Leonard Brown, Billy Proctor, but you can't take Geordie Barrett out at the moment
That's why I would,
with the way that he's played. So, Anton Leonard Brown, that 13 jersey, I still think would look pretty good on him for this next matchup. Moving on now, though, to the back three. Now, this is where you could say there was some very good performances and there were some not so good performances throughout this game. Number 11, Caleb Clark. I don't think that man now has any debate about whether or not he should be that number 11. And we've been saying it for a long time. Yeah. We've been saying it before they even put Mark Talia in that jersey. Caleb Clark has a lot of potential out on that wing. And it isn't just because of his ability to score tries. Yes, he scored 2. He was very humble in the post-match interview. He said, the boys set me up for those ones. I just had to run it in. But his work under the high ball is something that the All Blacks can use hugely to their advantage, definitely if they're trying those cross kicks. Overall well-roundedness, he's got a whole heap more ticks in the right boxes than Mark Talia at the moment for that left wing jersey. So I would go with him once again as the number 11. Number 14, I've gone with Will Jordan. Now, it sounds weird to say, but we've gone from thinking Will Jordan needs to be in there to watching his last performance and going, is there a chance they could look at a Sevu Reece out on that right wing for this game or something along those lines? It's really hard to take Will Jordan out. I feel like it was just one bad game, and normally he comes back from a bad game, scores 2 tries, and gets that strike rate back up to 100% when it comes to tries per matches. But yeah, he needs more of the ball. He still had his really good moments, but at the same time, just looked a little bit lost at times out on that right wing, it seemed, throughout this matchup. Number 15, I've got Beauden Barrett. Now, he had some really good kicks throughout this matchup against the Springboks. He also had some poor decisions, unfortunately, throughout those last couple minutes. When you're inside of your own 22 and the Springboks have 2 minutes left on the clock to win the game and you need a try, the last thing you want to be doing is just chipping it back to them twice in a row and say, you guys can have this ball because we don't know what to do with it. Yeah, that's the type of moment where you need Beauden Barrett to run the ball like we've seen in the past. We've seen highlight reels of that man piercing defence or getting an offload away. Yeah, Rugby World Cup 2015, wasn't it? When the commentators were screaming their heads off. But this game, they didn't get that moment. They said, oh, Beauden's kicked it away again. And unfortunately, the All Blacks just didn't get it back from that moment. Yeah. So if he can take that out of there, but of course, this game could be completely different. We don't know what the score will be going into the closing moments. Perhaps the All Blacks, if they score as many tries as they did in the last game, if not maybe more, they could find themselves in a good position where he doesn't have to attempt that. But there were the occasional very strong kicks from Beauden Barrett in this game. And also a couple good counter runs. He's still got his pace, which is massively beneficial for the ABs. So that is my back three that I think Scott Robertson will be going with.
Yeah, I think similar to you, I've also gone with Caleb Clark there. I just think he had an excellent game for them in that number 11 jersey. I think he's actually pretty honest actually with his post-match interview. Like, he didn't have to do much actually. He did. It's just more just running down the offense side and scoring those tries. And that's what he's known to do. Like, that's what his job is at the end of the day. And yeah, he ticked that box right off the back. And I think he made an impact. And funny enough, like I'm now kind of thinking towards the future. But when the All Blacks do face up against the Wallabies, they're going to be in dreamland, because watching that Wallabies game, like their kickoff was like one of the worst things I've seen in a while, where Argentina won 4 of them off the kickoff. So if that's something to continue, then Caleb Clark will have a field day on that run. But no, I think for the number 11 jersey, it's Caleb Clark's to lose. And I think for the 14, this is where you can make an argument, because yes, Sevu Reece is in the conversation. He's always going to be in that conversation. But I think it's Mark Talia who's actually more in the conversation for the 14 jersey, because that's where he normally plays anyway. Like, the good thing about him is that he can switch both sides. Like, it's Will Jordan though, and the thing, you want to see him play a lot more, because he's been out for a while, so you feel a bit hard to kind of just put him out of one, because he didn't have like the best game of his career that you expect, like that you put him out right off the back of that. So I think Will Jordan definitely stays in the number 14 jersey, and I want to see a lot more of him, I'd say, involved in their second test, because like you said, we didn't get to see too much of him in that first test. But yeah, for the 15, this is where I think they will also go with Beauden Barrett. I think Beauden Barrett, just like you said, he had moments in the game where, yes, he didn't make the correct decision, but at times, man, he is just a world-class player. Like, he just reminded me of how good he is at times, and just the right decisions he made, just how calm he is, and just yeah, just his presence really alone. He's the number 15. He's the number 15 because if going off what I predicted for the Springboks for what Razzie's going to select, I said Willie LaRue in that position. So you need a bit of experience to kind of back it up. And I think Beauden Barrett versus Willie LaRue could be a good battle in terms of those 15s.
So we've got Ruben Love in the Rugby Championship squad at the moment for the New Zealanders. You have Stephen Petafeta coming back maybe soon from his injury. Do you see Love getting any minutes up against Australia? Just because he's in a little bit of that same boat as George Bell at the moment. How you're one of those young players who are just hoping for that chance, but how do you take Beauden Barrett out of that 15 jersey if you're not putting Will Jordan in it? Then can you give one of those young guys the chance in a big matchup? Could we see a massive curveball here from Razor? I don't think he's had a big curveball with the exception of maybe Pasilio Tosi being selected in his July Internationals original squad. Other than that, I don't think we've seen a selection curveball that's made everyone go, oh, okay, didn't see that one coming. Most of it has some sort of, I guess, cohesion with what the original plan has been for Razor. Could you see him doing something crazy here and putting Ruben Love at 15? You could?
Well, not in this game. Not in this game, sorry, just to be clear. Not in this game. But in the Australia game, I actually have an idea already of what they could do in that one because I think they want to test players at the end of the day. You want to go into the best of the best. And I think Rugby Championship is that. And I think going against Australia will be a big occasion for those young players. So I think that's where I think Razor could try something there. But I think in the second test against the Boks, you can't really be doing that. I think, like, again, if there's a player who I would put in there, like, gosh, who would you put in there? I think Tosi is probably the one I can think of, just in terms of like someone you could put in who wasn't a part of that first test. But besides that, I don't think there's really any other player I can think of.
And it is so tricky to get a chance, definitely because after the first loss we saw for the All Blacks, we saw pretty much an identical lineup almost in the second match. And that seems to be the Razor mindset is if the boys lose it the first week, go out there and show us what you should have done in the second week up against the same side. But yeah, that Bledisloe Cup, it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not New Zealand want to experiment or whether they want to go with their strongest for both games. But at the moment, I think some people will make an argument we don't know what the New Zealand strongest lineup actually is at this stage. We're getting a fair idea, but there are still certain positions I would argue that we haven't found exactly what should be in the combination. But now we move on to the bench for yourself, Tim. We mentioned about the later stages of that last contest, the Springboks bomb squad doing extremely well, upping the tempo, upping the physicality. Have you gone with the 5-3? Have you got the 6-2 for this game?
I was actually considering the 6-2. I was actually considering the 6-2 for the first time, but I just got reminders of what the All Blacks did with a 6-2 the last time they faced the Springboks, and it definitely didn't go in their favor. So I don't think they'll go with that in this game. So I have gone with a 5-3 for the All Blacks in this, and for the replacements here, I have gone with Safa to be replacement hooker there, along with Ofatungafasi and Pasilio Tosi there as the tight head. So it's a bold call. I think that with Osafa, there's nothing really bold about him, I guess, in his selection, because I just think George Bell, I just think it's not the right time to kind of include him, I'd say, in terms of coming off the bench. With Alpha, I think he wasn't able to make too much of an impact, really, because he did get yellow carded, which is just a bit unfortunate because it was more of a team yellow card that he kind of picked up. And it's one of those where he can have a better game. I'll definitely think he'll have a better game than the second one if he isn't to be included. And then for a Tosi, it's a player which I think is needed because, again, Fletcher Newell I just didn't think he added anything in that when he came off the bench. I don't really think he. Maybe I'm wrong in this. Maybe I wasn't watching his game as much. But I think Tosi could bring something different in that position. I think Razor may consider that as well. So that's the reason why I included it.
Well, I've gone with the identical 3. I do feel like Pasilio Tosi has something that he can bring in. That is that running game that he offers as a tight head prop. If you're able to run hard at the line, like Fletcher Newell. I saw him a little bit in that first match, but it did seem like he was more of the player who got the tap on. It would be the first receiver and then the quick little tap to the guy next to him, either a lock or a loose forward. Whereas Pasilio Tosi, you could give that man the ball and he will run it straight. Up the guts was a phrase that we were discussing on the live stream. Some people outside of New Zealand and Australia wanting to know what it means. Do you know what that means, Tim?
No.
It sounds a bit dodgy. Do you not know what up the guts means?
No, I've never heard that term.
Do you want to have a guess?
Oh gosh, I don't know, up the boys. Like somebody just, I don't know, like
Up the boys.
I don't know, like just like I don't know, just a different word for boys as guts for some reason. I don't know. Like what is it? Tell me.
Okay, do you know the saying "run it straight, G"?
Yes. Yeah. For a second I was like no, but I was like yes.
Yes. Okay, so pretty much it's the same as run it straight, G. You know, up the guts, up the middle of the field.
Okay.
You talk about it for a number 12 or a 10, you know, that first receiver, but it can be used in the forwards, straight up the guts, straight through the middle. And yeah, that's something that Vasily Otosi can bring. I didn't think I'd be describing New Zealand and Australian slang in this prediction, but there you go. The more you know. So him and Asafa Moore, I think, can both run it straight up the guts in this contest. Ofa Tuangafasi, yes, he got that yellow card, and he'll be disappointed with it because at the end of the day, like, he got a lot of the blame for New Zealand losing it in the end, and I don't think it's warranted because Samapeni Finau, that rolling maul where the referee was like, you have to get out of there, and Samapeni Finau went,
like, what?
and then just ends up getting penalised for it, which then led to the try for the Springboks. It's just one of those ones that the bench as a whole for New Zealand needs to be better. And you wonder whether or not, you know, they're putting together a pretty decent starting side, but have they got the depth to be able to match it? Should they be mixing and matching a little bit? Have someone like South Africa do with a Quagga Smith or an Ebenezer making their way off the bench, someone with experience who can kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck. And I just don't think they have that at the moment in terms of the forwards anyway. But for myself, as the number 19, this kind of backs this up. I've got Sam Derry, great player, but not a lot of experience under his belt. I thought he was decent in the later moments, but didn't really get to find his feet. I don't think he was given enough time to really be able to do so. But at the end of the day, Scott Barrett and Tupavai both playing very well. So it was going to be hard to get Derry out on the field. Number 20, this is where I've got a new redemption story. It's not Sam Cane anymore. It is Samapeni Finau as my number 20 here. He's got to do something more than standing in the maul on the wrong side of it and getting himself penalised. He's a big man. I think, if I'm not wrong, there's a highlight of him running over the top of Willie LaRue and scoring a try for the All Blacks. Yes. But since then, you know, we haven't really seen too much. And he's the type of unit that should be able to do just that. He's about 6'5". He's got a lot of size to him. And later on a game, he should be lighting it on fire and really causing the opposition problems. Number 21, this is where I've got Wallace Satiti. I've got the 6-2 split, Tim, for this contest.
You have done
I want physicality. And I feel like having someone like a Wallace Satiti. Now, also, this role could go to Luke Jacobson if he is match fit. But I do think they need the extra forward. Because it just seemed to be later on in the game when the All Blacks started to get tired. That is when the mistakes started to come, and that is when South Africa picked up the momentum. Now, off the bench, they had Cortez Aratama, they had Anton Leonard-Brown, they had Mark Talia. I don't think they needed Anton Leonard-Brown and Mark Talia for that game. Because as late as it was that they made their way on the field, unless you've got an early injury, you only really need one of those two. Now, of course, it will backfire if they go with a 6-2 and there is an early injury. But if not, this could be exactly what the All Blacks need to do to try and counter a little bit of that danger that South Africa bring in the later stages of a game.
Wow, that's definitely a shock to me. But I like the 6-2 split. I like what you've done there. I mean, similar to you, I have also gone with Sam Day as the replacement lock. I think he just is the sure thing in terms of that position. Again, you could consider Josh Lord there, but I just think Derry deserves it, going up what he's done so far in the Rugby Championship. Second to him, this is where I have gone with Luke Jacobson. I have gone with him. I know it's a bold call because he wasn't included in that first test, but I just feel he's someone who can cover all positions, helps you out in that case. And I think with Finau, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's actually a very solid player. Like, he's actually, on his day, he can actually be a very, very good player. It's just, I just don't think it's what they need. I think Luke Jacobson is actually a player they need more for the second test than Finau. Just not really, just in terms of it's just the player that I'm kind of looking at. But I guess that's my forwards there.
So Jacobson, ideally, if everyone is able to play their normal game in the starting lineup, are you looking to replace Ethan Blackadder, Sam Cane, or Ardie Savia? In an ideal world, who would Jacobson go on for?
It would be for I'm doing it in the case of it would be for Sam Cane, and then what you would do is that you put Ethan Blackadder at the 7, and you put Luke Jacobson at the 6.
So now we have only got the 2 positions left in my case, but you have got 3 back replacements.
Indeed.
So who have you gone with in those 3 spots?
Yeah, so I've gone with I guess not the bold call, but I've gone with Cortis Latimer off the bench here. I mean, I was actually considering no Holtman. I just feel like I wouldn't mind seeing him actually involved in this game because we haven't seen much of him actually recently. But I just think it's one of those where do I think Razor will do that? I just don't think so. But in the 22, this is where I've gone with a bold call here. I've gone with Harry Plummer. I've gone with Harry Plummer to come off the bench here, and the reason for this is there's a lot of reasons. One, that he's very versatile in the way because he can cover that 10 spot if need be. With you, I know you have McKenzie, Newbone, and Barrett, but the good thing about Harry Plummer is that he can cover the 10, the 12, and the 15. So he can cover all three of those positions. And particularly with Jordy Barrett, if there's something wrong with him, that I'm wondering, like, okay, who goes in to replace him? Because I'm not going to put any other player on the field that I've selected really to go in that 12 position. So I feel like Harry Plummer is a solid option to have. I think he deserves the opportunity to go against the Springboks. I think it'd be awesome to watch. So that's another reason why I selected him there. And yeah, just he's a cool head. I mean, he can do the job. So I have to see it happen. And then yeah, for the 23, this is where I've gone with Rekolawani to finish it off. I think he can cover, again, it's that versatility, 13 or 11 if needed. And yeah, just offers you that kind of experience there. So yeah, that's my 23-man squad.
Righty, so we're relatively similar in that regard, minus the fact that I don't have Harry Plummer, although I do like the pick. Someone who had a very good Super Rugby Pacific season, and honestly, I feel was extremely unlucky to miss out on the original squad naming that we did see. If it wasn't for having Beauden Barrett as that backup fly half, I do believe we would have seen Plummer in that All Black squad. But for myself, I have got Cortis Latimer as my number 22, and then Rieko Ioane as my number 23. So that does mean that I am missing Mark Talia. Means that I'm missing Sever Reese. I haven't got a Billy Proctor. Haven't got a Harry Plummer. But at this stage, I just feel like it's worth that risk by having that extra forward. Now, the last time, like you said, that they tried that 6-2 split, it didn't go too well for New Zealand. But is it worth trying again here? Just to try and...
Why not?
You just need numbers, don't you, in terms of those later players. And it's just going to be a very interesting kind of matchup, whether or not South Africa have got so many changes that New Zealand have to completely rethink their tactics in this game, or whether they're able to build upon what they did in the first match and then try and get themselves a big win in South Africa. Like we said, the Freedom Cup's on the line. If they win this game, then they get to retain the Freedom Cup. South Africa have not won that Freedom Cup for, I believe it's around a decade, if not a little bit longer at this point.
2009 was the last time they won it. So, yeah.
Jeez, that's 15 years ago. Isn't it weird to think how long ago Rugby 08 came out? Did you play that game a lot or not really? Yeah.
That was actually the one game or bowling game when I played in terms of rugby. So yeah, that was that's a throwback right there. But yes, yeah, no, it's crazy to think just because the All Blacks dominance just for so many years just been remarkable to watch. But yeah, it's maybe a different kind of dynasty now with the Springboks now. So, but we have to wait and see if they can back it up though. That's the thing. Can they back it up? We'll have to wait and see in the second test.
But nonetheless, we do thank you all very much for tuning in to this lineup prediction. Of course, this is what we feel Scott Robertson will be going with in this matchup up against the Springboks. Do let us know who you think he will go with in the comments down below, as well as your own lineup that you would love to see in this game up against South Africa. Be sure to check out Rugbyitch and his YouTube channel. It is in the pinned comment as well as the description. Thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we will see you all for the next one.